Wah.
The war in Ukraine has its roots in a complex history involving
Wow.
regional tensions, geopolitical strategies, and internal political dynamics. Here is a summary of key historical events leading up to and including the ongoing conflict. Pre-2014 context. Definition of a nation-state. A nation-state is a political entity characterized by a defined territory, a stable population, a government, and the presence of a national identity. The nation-state typically possesses the following features. 1. Sovereignty. It has full control over its internal and external affairs. 2. Defined territory. It occupies a specific geographical area. 3. Stable population. It has a relatively stable and permanent population. 4. Government. It has an organized political structure or government. 5. National identity. It often has a shared sense of identity, culture, language, or history among its population. Origin and evolution of the nation-state. The concept of the nation-state has evolved over centuries, influenced by historical, social, and political developments. Here's an overview of its origin and evolution. Early origins. City-states and empires. Before the nation-state, political organization was often based on city-states, like ancient Athens and Sparta, and empires, like the Roman Empire. These entities controlled territories, but did not necessarily promote a unified national identity. Middle Ages, feudalism. During the medieval period, Europe was characterized by feudalism, where local lords had significant power, and loyalty was often to a local leader rather than a centralized state. There were kingdoms and principalities, but these did not align with modern nation-states. Renaissance and early modern period. Emergence of centralized monarchies. In the late Middle Ages and Renaissance, centralized monarchies began to form in places like France, England, and Spain. These monarchies started to consolidate power, laying the groundwork for the modern nation-state. Treaty of Westphalia, 1648. Often cited as the birth of the modern nation-state, the Treaty of Westphalia ended the 30 Years' War in Europe and established the principles of territorial sovereignty and non-interference in the domestic affairs of other states. This treaty marked the transition from feudalism to a system of sovereign states. 18th and 19th centuries. Enlightenment and nationalism. The Enlightenment period introduced ideas about democracy, individual rights, and self-determination. These ideas contributed to the rise of nationalism, where people began to see themselves as part of a nation with a common identity. American and French revolutions. The American Revolution, 1775 to 1783, and the French Revolution, 1789 to 1799, were pivotal in promoting the concept of the nation-state. These revolutions emphasized the idea of a nation governing itself and the legitimacy of government derived from the people. 19th century nationalism. Throughout the 19th century, nationalist movements in Europe led to the unification of Italy and Germany. Similar movements occurred elsewhere, emphasizing the idea that each nation should have its own state. 20th century and beyond. Decolonization. The 20th century saw the dissolution of empires and the emergence of new nation-states, particularly after World War II. The process of decolonization led to the creation of numerous nation-states in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Globalization and challenges. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, globalization has challenged the traditional nation-state model. Issues such as migration, transnational corporations, and supranational organizations, like the European Union, have influenced the concept of sovereignty and national identity. Conclusion. The nation-state is a relatively modern concept that emerged from historical processes of centralization, revolution, and nationalism. It has become the dominant form of political organization worldwide, though it faces new challenges in an increasingly interconnected world. Further reading. For more detailed information, you can refer to Encyclopedia Britannica, britannica.com/topic nation state, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Plato, play.stanford.edu/entries, nationalism/, history.com, history.com for articles on the Treaty of Westphalia, the French Revolution, and other related topics. Comparing the dissolution of the Soviet Union with the dissolution of British power in India can be historically beneficial and interesting for several reasons. Both events led to significant geopolitical changes, the emergence of new nations, and a range of socio-political and economic challenges. Here are some key points of comparison and contrast. Points of comparison. 1. Colonial and imperial breakups. Soviet Union. The dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 resulted in the emergence of 15 independent republics, including Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states. It marked the end of a centralized communist empire that had significant control over Eastern Europe and parts of Asia. British India. The end of British colonial rule in 1947 led to the partition of India and the creation of two independent states, India and Pakistan. Burma, now Myanmar, and Bangladesh, initially part of Pakistan as East Pakistan, also emerged as separate nations shortly after. Ethnic and religious conflicts. Soviet Union. The breakup led to ethnic and regional conflicts, such as the wars in Chechnya, Nagorno-Karabakh, and Transnistria. These conflicts were driven by ethnic, religious, and nationalist sentiments that had been suppressed during Soviet rule. British India. The partition of India was marked by violent communal riots between Hindus and Muslims, leading to mass migration. Based on our conversation, there appears to be a logical thread in your thinking focused on understanding the complexities and origins of conflicts, particularly through the lens of national identity, sovereignty, and the historical development of the nation-state. Here are some key points that seem to connect your inquiries. 1. Conflict and sovereignty. You are interested in how conflicts arise from issues of sovereignty and territorial integrity, as seen in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. This ties into the broader theme of how states assert and protect their sovereignty, and how violations of this principle can lead to protracted conflicts. 2. Historical comparisons. By comparing the dissolution of the Soviet Union with the dissolution of British power in India, you are exploring how historical transitions and the emergence of new states have led to conflicts and challenges. This indicates a curiosity about the patterns and lessons that can be learned from different historical contexts. 3. Nation-state concept. Your interest in defining and understanding the evolution of the nation-state suggests a focus on how national identity and state sovereignty are fundamental to many conflicts. This includes looking at how the nation-state model developed and its implications for modern geopolitical issues. 4. Broader implications. Your thinking seems to be leading towards understanding the broader implications of these conflicts, such as the role of national identity and historical grievances in fueling conflicts, the impact of geopolitical strategies and international relations on national sovereignty, the potential for historical analysis to inform current policy and conflict resolution. Logical thread. Understanding conflict through historical and national perspectives. The overarching theme in your inquiries is understanding how historical events, national identity, and the evolution of the nation-state contribute to modern conflicts. You seem to be exploring how these elements interact to shape international relations and what lessons can be drawn to prevent or resolve conflicts. Potential next steps. To further develop this logical thread, you might consider detailed case studies examining specific conflicts like the Ukraine-Russia conflict and the partition of India in more detail to identify common patterns and unique factors. Theoretical frameworks, exploring political science theories on nationalism, sovereignty, and conflict to provide a structured understanding of these issues. Policy implications. Considering the practical implications of these insights for current and future conflict resolution strategies. Further reading. For more in-depth exploration, consider the following resources. Books on Nationalism and Sovereignty, Imagined Communities by Benedict Anderson, The Origins of Nationalism by Caspar Hershey, Historical Analyses, The Soviet Experiment, Russia, the USSR, and the Successor States by Ronald Grigor Suni, Freedom at Midnight by Dominique Lapierre and Larry Collins on the Partition of India, Political Science Journals, Journal of Conflict Resolution, International Security, by By delving into these areas, you can further refine your understanding and continue exploring the intricate connections between historical developments, national identity, and modern conflicts. Definition of a nation-state. A nation-state is a political entity characterized by a defined territory, a stable population, a government, and the presence of a national identity. The nation-state typically possesses the following features. 1. Sovereignty. It has full control over its internal and external affairs. 2. Defined territory. It occupies a specific geographical area. 3. Stable population. It has a relatively stable and permanent population. 4. Government. The role of oligarchies and their use of media to manipulate public opinion is a critical aspect of understanding modern political and social dynamics. This phenomenon can be observed in various countries and has significant implications for democracy, governance, and public perception. Here's an overview of how oligarchies use media to achieve their objectives. Mechanisms of media manipulation. 1. Ownership and control. Media conglomerates. Oligarchs often own major media outlets, allowing them to control the dissemination of information. By owning television networks, newspapers, and online platforms, they can shape public discourse to serve their interests. Concentration of media ownership. When a few wealthy individuals or corporations own a large portion of the media, it limits the diversity of viewpoints and enables the consolidation of power and influence. 2. Propaganda and messaging. Framing and agenda setting. Media controlled by oligarchs can prioritize certain issues while downplaying or ignoring others. This technique shapes public perception and sets the agenda for national conversations. Propaganda. Disseminating information, often with emotional or biased content, to promote specific political or economic interests. This can include nationalistic messaging, vilification of opponents, and spreading misinformation. 3. Disinformation and misinformation. Fake news. Deliberately spreading false or misleading information to confuse the public, discredit opponents, or distract from critical issues. Astroturfing. Creating the illusion of grassroots support or opposition to manipulate public opinion and political outcomes. 4. Censorship and suppression. Censoring opposition. Limiting or blocking access to media outlets that present dissenting views or criticize the oligarchy. Legal and extra-legal measures. Using legal frameworks or extra-legal means, such as harassment or intimidation, to suppress journalists and media outlets that do not align with the oligarch's interests. Case studies and examples. 1. Russia, state-controlled media. The Russian government, under Vladimir Putin, has significant control over major media outlets. State television channels dominate the media landscape, promoting the government's narrative and marginalizing opposition voices. Propaganda campaigns. The Kremlin uses media to bolster nationalistic sentiments and justify its actions, such as the annexation of Crimea and the conflict in Ukraine. 6. 7 source. 2. United States, media consolidation. A small number of conglomerates own the majority of media outlets, leading to concerns about biased reporting and influence over public opinion. Prominent media owners can shape the political landscape through their editorial policies. Political advertising. Wealthy individuals and corporations use their financial power to fund political campaigns and advertisements, influencing election outcomes and policy decisions. 3. China, state media control. The Chinese Communist Party controls major media outlets, ensuring that the party's narratives and policies are promoted while censoring dissent. Great Firewall. The Chinese government restricts access to foreign media and information, controlling the flow of information and maintaining its narrative. Building blocks of the human brain. Words, language, communication, and education. The human brain's software, composed of words, language, communication, and education, forms the foundation of cognitive...
Oh no, I think it's died.
Development and social interaction. Here's an in-depth look at these components and their significance.
Shut up and I'm gonna read it myself. Building blocks of the human brain: words, language, communication, and education. The human brain's software, composed of words, language, communication, and education, forms the foundation of cognitive development and social interaction. Here's an in-depth look at these components and their significance. 1. Words and language. Fundamental units. Words are the basic units of language representing objects, actions, ideas, and feelings. They are crucial for encoding and transmitting information. Syntax and grammar. Language is structured through syntax, rules that dictate word order, and grammar, rules that govern word forms and sentence structures. This structure allows for the creation of meaningful and complex sentences. I don't think explaining all about words and everything is not actually all that pertinent, relevant. Relevant.
Building blocks of the human brain: words, language, communication, and education. The human brain's software, composed of words, language, communication, and education, forms the foundation of cognitive development and social interaction. Here's an in-depth look at these components and their significance. 1. Words and language. Fundamental units. Words are the basic units of language, representing objects, actions, ideas, and feelings. They are crucial for encoding and transmitting information. Syntax and grammar. Language is structured through syntax, rules that dictate word order, and grammar, rules that govern word forms and sentence structures. This structure allows for focusing on the pertinent and relevant aspects of how oligarchies use media to manipulate the public and the foundational elements of the human brain. Words, language, communication, and education can provide a clearer understanding of the interplay between cognitive development and societal influence. Media manipulation by oligarchies. 1. Ownership and influence. Concentration of media ownership. Oligarchs often own significant portions of media outlets, which enables them to control the narrative. This concentration can lead to a homogenized perspective that serves their interests. Noam Chomsky and Edward S. Herman, Manufacturing Consent. Ignatius, state-controlled media heavily influence public opinion by promoting government-approved narratives and suppressing dissenting voices. Freedom House, Freedom in the World Report, Flash, freedomhouse.org. 2. Propaganda and censorship. Propaganda techniques. Oligarchs use media to disseminate propaganda, framing information in ways that support their agendas. This can involve selective reporting, emotional appeals, and repetition of key messages. Encyclopedia Britannica, propaganda, http://britannica.com, propaganda. Censorship. Controlling and censoring information flow is a common tactic. Governments may shut down or intimidate independent media outlets to prevent the spread of opposing viewpoints. Reporters Without Borders, rsf.org/ranking. Cognitive foundations. Words, language, communication, and education. 1. Language and cognitive development. Language acquisition. The process of acquiring language is crucial for cognitive development. It shapes how individuals think, categorize information, and interact with the world. Steven Pinker, The Language Instinct. Neural basis. Language processing involves various brain regions, including Broca's area and Wernicke's area. Effective communication relies on the interplay of these neural circuits.